Hi, this is Ryan Clark, and I'm going to show you guys how I make all of these custom vector textures in Adobe Illustrator using brushes. So basically to get started, the first thing that we're going to do is hop over to Photoshop where I have a scan of some textures that I've made just with pencil and paper. You can start off with any sort of texture that you want, whether it's a photograph or some sort of EPS file or anything really. You just need to get into Illustrator. So I am going to grab one of these shapes and copy it real quick, and then hop over to Illustrator into a new document and just go ahead and paste this in. So once you have your shape here in Illustrator, it's actually a pretty simple process. First, we're going to live trace it. You can see that when I live trace it, nothing really shows up. So you need to mess with the threshold and the minimum area to get like a real nice, somewhat complex shape. So somewhere around 200 should work for this. Maybe try a minimum area of closer to like 3. This is good. There's a lot of shapes, big shapes, small shapes. You want to make sure that you have a kind of a varied size of vector objects going on to make a really nice complex texture. So I'm going to grab this and go ahead and expand it. So this is actually, this is a nice little texture just as it is. I could take this and I could copy and paste it around, but in order to make it super useful, I want to turn it into a scatter brush. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and grab one of these shapes, do a select all, cut them out, and delete all of these kind of weird objects that are created by live trace. So go ahead and delete those, paste your shapes back in, and now you have just the isolated vector shapes. If I grab these shapes and pull them over to the brush palette over the new brush little button, then it'll pull up this dialog box where I can choose scatter brush, hit OK, and hit OK again. So you can see I now have a scatter brush here in my palette for this new one that I've made. If I zoom back out and use the brush tool real quick, I can make a path and apply this to it, and you can see that it actually doesn't look that cool. So we have a couple of options and some things to make this work a little bit better. So I'm gonna grab this and go over here to my brush and double click to open those options back up again. And you can see previews on so that you can see kind of how these options interact with the brush. The first thing that I'm going to do is change the spacing. These are a little bit too far apart, so I want to bring them together. So I'm just going to move these closer together until about somewhere in here. All of these options are kind of you need to eyeball them. It really depends on the specific texture that you're working with. So don't just copy whatever numbers we end up with at the end of this. Feel free to play around and mess with stuff to the extent that you need to make something really cool and unique. So we're going to bring these things closer together. We're also going to change the scatter. And what the scatter is going to do is move them off of that line to a varying degree. You can see like there. But I don't want them all to move uniformly, so I'm going to change this to random. And then I'm going to check and do some change these around a little bit. That's way too much. I'm gonna keep it closer to somewhere in here, about 10, 13 on each side. That creates like a really nice kind of organic feel to it. Like it doesn't feel so repeated and mechanical. The real key is the rotation. I'm also going to change the random rotation for each of these. And I'm going to pull these a little bit more so that they're a little bit more crazy and dynamic. And you can see what it really does. It really meshes these together. Still maybe a little close apart. I'm going to use my spacing to pull them in even closer together. And then also don't forget to change the colorization method to tints so that you can actually make this brush into a color. So this is basically, go ahead and apply it. This is basically how I create all of the brushes that I sell online, and it's really just a matter of finding a texture that works for you and for what you're trying to do, and then playing around with the settings and trying to get something that feels right. I mean, you can see, like, by just creating a simple shape, I've now created this, awesome big bunch of texture. And it's nice because this is, completely editable. I can go back and change any of those settings. I can move it around. It saves me a ton of time when I'm working on projects, and allows me to basically turn files like this, that are flat and vector based, into things like this that have a little bit of grit to them, that have a little bit of depth to them, and I can go in using a mixture of white brushes and black brushes to create, those spots where it's kind of like been rubbed off or distressed in some way. So I hope that really helps you guys, and that you can use these in your own illustrations. And thanks for watching the tutorial.